guys, I wanted to come on here. Ooh, sorry, I had to check the microphone, make sure it was on, and talk about something that I just did, which was a really good research adventure. I had scheduled an interview with Wells Fargo advisors, and I was trying to get a bank story, but I didn't get one. So I'm not going to hold anything back because now this research adventure has turned into something I can really share to hopefully help people who might be thinking about should the currency revaluation happen here shortly. What do you do next? Well, that's one of the things that I'm thinking about. I certainly didn't only go and speak with them because of the currency reevaluation. There are other things that I'm working on that will warrant me needing an advisor group within the trust sector. So, one of the things that will happen if should you be a beneficiary or receiving funds from the currency revaluation that's coming, and it's a great amount, as in millions of dollars. It's going to be a huge life-changing event. And I would imagine that many of you have put some thought into this already in how you want to consider the things to do when that happens so you don't end up a statistic, within a year or two where you ended up with this amazing gift and suddenly it's all gone when you could have done some planning and made sure that it not only lasted for the rest of your lifetime, so you had a comfortable life, but so that you could also do a lot more with it, up to and including helping family members or doing some philanthropic work or, humanitarian work, what have you. So, one of the things that you might want to consider is starting to educate yourself on the banking arena and what it means to have teams. You're going to need to have some teams. And some of you may have already been looking into this, perhaps with the Seeds of Wisdom team on Telegram or their website. They have some amazing tools and some amazing guidance available there that's all for not maybe not all free, but most of it is free. And then there are other resources that it would, introduce you to that could possibly help even further. But I know one of those things before I was getting on my meeting today with the Wells Fargo advisors team, I just happened to pull up a draft email, which I had forgotten was in my drafts. And it had this paper that I believe originally came from the Seeds of Wisdom team about 5 teams. So I'm just going to skim it really quick. And then I'm going to share something else that came up out of my meeting with the Wells Fargo Advisors Group that may also be helpful. So this is just a really quick video with ideas that may help you start to do some planning. That I know there are probably people talking about this, but I haven't personally run into them. So I thought it would be nice to do just a brief little overview of things one might want to consider when they're looking at this to plan for their receipt of their gift after the currency revaluation. So, one of the things you want to consider if you're suddenly having a life-changing event where you have millions of dollars and you're not accustomed to living that way, you may want to consider there could be up to 5 teams that you'll want to structure within your life. So, the first team is a tier one bank. A tier one bank is a big bank like JP Morgan Chase or Wells Fargo or HSBC or Fifth Third, Bank of America, different banks like that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the questions that I asked the Wells Fargo Advisor Group, because that will play into you're actually going to want to interview the bank teams that you choose to consider working with. And you want to think about the questions that you're going to ask them in advance. So that would be the first team is your tier one bank team. The second team, you want to have more than one bank, likely, should you come into this kind of financial situation. You would also want a local full service bank in your area because your tier one bank with the trust services may or may not be right in your local area. And they'll just help you with other things. I'll see if I can find a way to post a link to this paper. I can't recall exactly where I got it now, so I'm not sure that I can. And I have not tried to post a PDF to one of my YouTube shows before, but if I can figure that out, I'll certainly try. I'm just going to skim it. I'm not going to go into it a lot, but at your team two, at a local bank, you're going to want to have a private banker. You're going to want to know what their philosophy is and see if that works with you, things like that. Your team three could be a transition team because your whole life is about to change, right? You're going to need somebody to help you if you want to buy a home. And you should think about that if you don't already have, say, a realtor in mind. You may want to do some research about the realtors in your local area, look at some of the top realtors, producing realtors in your area. And, I'm going to put this in there. Sometimes the top producing realtors may not be the best personality match. So don't just stop there. Be open-minded because my background was in the mortgage industry and I worked with a lot of realtors over 22 years. And some of my favorite realtors weren't necessarily the top producing ones. You still want to be conscious of their personality and their goals and their skill set, but just, put a lot of thought into these things. For example, in your team three, you may want to have a good realtor. Let's see here. Security. As you purchase a new home or keep your existing home, you may want to have a security team or set up security around your home. There are lots of different things you want to consider. Who are you going to use? Are you going to need an executive security firm? It all depends on which level that you're at with all of this when it happens, right? You think about the services they provide. Make sure that, you may want to make sure that your technology is more secure than it has been in the past because now you'll have more at risk. Lots of different things like that. This is just to warm you up the thinking that you may want to consider. Team four is your trust company team. Now, to me, this plays in a little bit with team one. It looks like team one is talking more about the redemption center actually itself, where you'll go to redeem your currency. So I don't think we're going to have a huge issue with that. And at the redemption center, those folks there will likely be able to give you some referrals. I would think they may have a pre-printed list or something. But if you start doing some research now to interview the different available options, it'll help you springboard into your future, right? So, and it's much nicer if you've already started doing the work before it happens. And this is kind of manifesting as well. If you're planning to receive your gift and planning on how you're setting your life up in the future, then that's one of the steps that can help you manifest because you'll start envisioning what that future looks like, right? So back to team four, the trust company team, and those are like Wells Fargo advisors. That's a trust company team whom I just interviewed with today. And there are some questions in there that you're going to want to consider. Things like, are they ISO 222 compliant? Are they Basel III compliant? And I learned a new terminology today when I was speaking with them. And let's see, I'll pull it up. I've got on my share screen here because they were talking to me about the globally systematic important banks. I don't think I quite wrote that down right, but I will share my screen and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So here we go. So this is right off of the BIS website, the Bank of International Settlements, right? Or you know what I mean? They call them GSIBs, which, let's see, where is it? It stands for globally systematic, I think it's global systematically important banks, I believe actually is what it is. It's kind of hard to see on the share screen here because part of it's covered up for me. And anyhow, so it's interesting. This is the last publication from the BIS, and it was from the end of 2022. So there have been some changes. I couldn't find a more recent list. I was just trying to do this quickly. So I know when I was speaking with Wells Fargo advisors, they said they are in the top 8 now. So this list has certainly changed significantly. They were not in the top 8 at the end of 2022, which makes sense. We've seen a lot of banks failing, right? So I'll leave this up for a minute while I talk. Of course, you can just do a search for GSIBs or global systematically important banks, and you can do your own research to find out all kinds of information on this. But it would seem to me that now, when I was speaking with the Wells Fargo advisor team, they had referenced the top 8 being the best, and there are 30 on this list in general for the GSIBs. And in general, it sounds like you can expect the top 8 to have many of the things that we're looking for. Things like, are they ISO 20022 compliant? Which is connecting with the digital system, like the QFS, Quantum Financial System, in order for them to be able to do things internationally and complete digital transactions. That's what I'm understanding about the ISO 20022 in a very short little description. And then Basel III is another thing that they would be compliant with, and that means that they have a greater amount of reserves in hard assets to back up the deposits or posits within their bank, right? So those are important things that you want to find out. And what I'm sharing with you tells me that if we could get like the most current list of the GSIBs, what's on the screen right now, the majority, if not, I would think actually all of them would be compliant with that, or they wouldn't be on this list. So I haven't finished reading about all of the details of what the BIS GSIBs list is supposed to encompass. But according to this Wells Fargo advisor, that's what that means. And he was a really neat man, gentleman. He had been working with that group since 2008. And so he had a really decent history working as a Wells Fargo advisor around trusts. Trust teams at private banking institutions like Wells Fargo, what they do is they help people do exactly what we're talking about when they go to, usually you might want to set up some trusts. As you learn more about what happens when you become very wealthy, you want to secure your funds, you want to protect your wealth, and that's what they help you do. And they're a great resource for advice. I'll do a little plug. I was really happy with the things that they told me. One of the other things you might be interested in is, do they work not only with securities, but with bonds? I imagine all of them do. But, and then there are some things that play into that as far as, can they help with instituting security transactions, placing bonds on the market, different things like that. And in fact, they do that at Wells Fargo. Again, I would imagine all of these GSIBs do that. And we're talking about international banking at this point, not just within the United States. So I wanted to share that I left one team off. The 5th team is, of course, just going to be your self-selected team, like personal assistants, people that help you with your day-to-day life. You know, it's unlikely that you're going to want to continue being the one that does everything around your house, like cleaning it, possibly even preparing your meals. You may want to get a cook. So all of those things like that. you may want to start putting some consideration into if you haven't already. And the first area, though, I think is probably one of the most important, is what I've spent most of my time talking about here, which would be picking your financial teams. You don't already, it's nice to have an idea of where you plan to go for your actual redemption appointment, but it's also, and even more important, to try to start figuring out what you're going to do after you receive your gift. Are you going to establish a trust? Are you going to establish multiple trusts? And I am not a financial advisor by any means, so please do your own research. But I'm just trying to give you some tips that might help you get a head start here. One of the really good pieces of advice, which I had already been thinking about, but it was a good reminder, so I'm going to repeat it here, that the Wells Fargo advisor gave me today, was that what they tell all of their clients when they are new to a great gift of financial wealth, having a new situation, they reminded me that they tell people to just settle into your new situation for at least 6 months to a year before you do anything. Don't go crazy. Take some time, sit with it, establish a plan. And that's why you really want to pick an advisor group that you want to work with. It doesn't necessarily have to be with a bank. I know a lot of people have maybe some negative feelings about banks, and I can understand that. But there are good banks out there, and it's just a tool that we need in order to function in today's world. Because I don't think, as much as many of us might want to completely get away from commerce in the commercial system, I just don't see that going away 100%. So, in light of that, it might be good to consider getting prepared so that you know how to function in it and you have a support team to help you do that so that you can make your new wealth last for a long period of time. And on that note, I want to say one thing. If none of you have currency, you can still get some currency at a decent price. They're not, in fact, the prices have come down a little bit. If you go to APMEX, APMEX.com, for example, and I don't work with any of these people. Obviously, I hardly have any followers, but I greatly appreciate all of my followers. You can look for Zim, ZIM, and you could even just pick up a Zim. It is a gamble. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but you can pick up a 100 trillion Zim right now, 2008. I believe it's 129.99. That's what it was the other day when I looked. When I first purchased my first Zim note, bond, what have you, it was about twice that much. It was like 259 or something like that. And that's a good sign, actually. It might seem a little counterintuitive, but from my understanding, brokers are not allowed to exchange their leftover currency. That's part of the benefit for them. As being a broker, they get to sell the currency, but whatever's left over, if there's a revaluation, they can't go and just exchange their leftovers. So they need to sell it before the revaluation happens. To me, my logic tells me that means if they're trying to lower the price on that currency, we must be getting closer to the revaluation. So that's just one example. If you'd like to have some more examples of currencies to consider, I would refer you to the original Mark Z, and he is listed as a friend of the channel. He's much more of an expert than I am, and I certainly could talk a little bit more about currency, but he's the guy. And if you go to his website, theoriginalmarkz.com, and look for, I think it's .com. Anyway, just Google the original Mark Z, exactly like it sounds. You'll find his website. And there's a beginners section there. There's a lot of really great resources there. And you can find out all kinds of stuff about currency. You should be able to buy it up until the last moment that the RV happens. Currency reevaluation is often termed the RV. So that's all I've got for today. I know I'm excited about jumping on and watching the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin. So that's coming up here in a few minutes, and I'm certainly not going to miss that. So in the meantime, everyone take care and blessings. See you next time. And I'm sorry, I forgot to stop sharing. Oh well, maybe I'll re-record it.